and great to see everybody still having a meeting, even though we can't go to the room. So welcome and please enjoy. Okay, so it is customary to open the meeting with a moment of silence, followed by the serenity prayer. May we have that moment now, please. God, grant me serenity to accept the things
I cannot change,
courage
to change the things I can,
and wisdom to know the difference. Okay, what's Alcoholics Anonymous all about? Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denominations, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And to do that, we have readings from the big book, and the first one we have, I suppose I'm qualified first, I guess. Eh? Okay, so I'm a textbook alcoholic. When I read that blurb at the beginning, the doctor's opinion, I said, yeah, that's me, that's for sure. I certainly had progressive drinking up to the point where the wife left, the kids left, and I was left in financial problems and had to sell the house. I was praying to die, and I didn't know where to go, and I had no power. I was powerless. And when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, they gave me the big book, and they told me that I could find a power greater than myself here in Alcoholics Anonymous. And for the last almost 20 years, it's been working in my life and helping me and countless others. And I'm very grateful. I've been able to survive that very dark place and come to a place of light and hope. And that's what you guys give me, and I'm really thankful for that. And I got divorced, I got remarried, and life is good today. I travel a lot, and I'm retired now. And it's good to see all you smiling faces. I've been going to so many meetings, it's crazy, but that's okay. Anyways, thank you for being here, and that should qualify me. Okay, so we have the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and Wim is going to read that for me. Thanks, Wim. Still here?
Yeah, I'm just trying to unmute him. There he goes. He's on.
Hi, friends. My name is Wim, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Wim.
I am very honored to be asked. Thank you very much, Al, to participate in the meeting. I am very grateful to AA and showing me the 12 steps, and here they are, the 12 steps I live by every day. Thank you, AA. The 12 steps of AA. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching, fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly ask Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him. praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening, as the results of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Thank you.
Thanks, Wim. Great job, buddy. And to do the 12 traditions, I've asked Patricia.
Hi, everyone. I am an alcoholic. I'm a grateful member of the Kedron group, and my name is Patricia. Thank you, Al, for asking me to read tonight. I'm very privileged to do so. The 12 traditions. 1, our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. 2, for our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as He may express Himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern. 3, the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. 4, each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole. 5, each group has but one primary purpose, to carry its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. 6, an AA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the AA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. 7, every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. 8, Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. 9, AA as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. 10, Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues. Hence, the AA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. 11, our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and film. And 12, anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personality.
Thank you, Patricia. Wonderful job. Thank you. And at this time, I'd like to introduce our speaker. He comes all the way from Nashville, Tennessee, to share his message. And the committee is pleased to introduce Steve L. from Nashville, Tennessee.
Well, thank you, Al, and good evening, everyone. I'm Steve Lee. I'm an alcoholic, and I am grateful to be spending this Saturday evening with you guys at the Saturday speaker series, which sounds like it's been a cool deal. I was on the meeting a little early, and just like when we go to our home groups, you know, that arriving at the meeting early, there was a lot of conversation and a buzz and greetings, and it just a nice energy that sometimes we miss here on Zoom. And so it was great to be made to feel a part of that. Al, thanks for chairing the meeting, and Rob, thank you for the invitation to join you guys. You know, we were talking before the meeting, and it's been my experience, as I can tell it has been for so many of you, that this is we're getting a little more used to meeting via these Zoom meetings and video conferencing, and there's a lot of blessings in the burdens of this COVID-19 world. There's certainly early in this process, it felt like each day and each week there was progressively more that I couldn't do, where I couldn't go, and the restrictions on my life as a result of what we're going through. And but at a certain point that shifted, and I began to become so acutely aware of the opportunities that are also available in what we're doing. I'm getting a little more familiar with speaking on Zoom. I won't say I'm getting better at it, but I'm familiar, and I will tell you that the very first talk I did on Zoom in March was to a group, and they said that there were going to probably be 1,000 people on there. That's where it capped off, and it was a big group in New York, and they did. I'm beginning my talk as I am here, but I was looking down at the participants icon, and I'm seeing these numbers grow. I'm seeing it go from 500 to 700 to 800, and I found myself speaking more loudly so the people in the back could hear. And then I realized that we are all on the virtual front row. And what has happened over time with that is this becomes much more of a conversation than a presentation. And it becomes much more of just kind of a living room fireside chat, if you will, than it does a theatrical talk in a big auditorium. And so in some ways, in an odd way, sometimes it feels intimate. I will say what I miss is the energy. You know, I sometimes get off of these meetings and you have no idea whether you made a connection with, whether I connected with you. And, you know, when we're all in the same room together, that's much more apparent. I just think there's an energy that flows back and forth, and I certainly miss that. But I'll try to do what you asked me to do tonight, and what AA asked me to do. And I think there's a couple of things there. You know, I'm encouraged to do what I think at our core we all do in Alcoholics Anonymous, which is to tell the truth about ourselves. We all show up here with a story. It's our story, and the more honestly and the more openly I'm able to share that story, it seems the more useful it is. I often kid that my first few years sober, I had a much more exciting story than the story you'll hear tonight. It wasn't true, but it was exciting. And but I discovered that it wasn't very useful. And our book says that we tell the new man exactly what happened to us. And that means for me to share with you, to embellish something or to make something up that didn't happen, or to shy away from something that did happen, are both an equal disservice to Alcoholics Anonymous. But the person who is most endangered by that would be me. So my story is not supposed to land and resonate with everyone, but it'll land where it's supposed to, and I'll just do my best to share honestly. Now, I often make the distinction that I'm going to be honest with you tonight, but I don't have the same commitment to accuracy. I've discovered that I'm often honestly mistaken, even about what happened to me. I will tell you, one night I had given a talk. My wife was with me. We were at a conference, and we got back up to our room that evening, and she said, Steve, you know that last 10 or 15 minutes of your talk? And I prepared myself for a compliment. And I said, well, yes, I do. And she said, I would love to meet that guy. She said, I wish you would bring him home sometime. And she was kidding, but not. What I will tell you is what I discovered from that, or what I'm reminded of by something like that, is how I see me is not always how other people see. And how I see you is never the whole story. So I just have to be careful not to let these snippets that we have with each other be the defining moment of a relationship. Because I often have been guilty of defining a relationship with someone based on our worst moment together, our worst encounter, that thing that happened 10 years ago, and not recognizing that we are fully formed people who, as the 12 and 12 says, that there's good in the worst of us and bad in the best of us, that I'm capable of a whole gamut of emotions and actions. My sobriety date's June 30th, 1989, and my home group is the Recovery on the Road group of Alcoholics Anonymous. And when we meet in person, we meet here in Nashville on historic Music Row, which is just a few blocks from where I live. So I hope when circumstances allow, you'll be in Nashville sometime and maybe visit us. When I tell you June 30th of '89 was my sobriety date, then I can tell you that on July the 18th, 31 years ago tonight, I was in day 18 of a treatment center stay. And I was just in that state, just beginning to shift from a person who had alcohol-related problems to maybe a guy that had alcoholism, the way the men and women in Alcoholics Anonymous were describing alcoholism. On June the 29th of '89 is the last time I've had a drink or a drug, but I didn't intend that to be the last time I had a drink or a drug. It wasn't a planned stop. I wasn't skidding to a halt. I literally was scheduled into a treatment program on July the 1st of 1989, not out of a desire to stop drinking, not out of a belief that I needed some moral uplift in my life. I was going strictly to fulfill my obligation to the legal system of Williamson County, Tennessee, for the conviction of my 6th DUI a year before. And as a result of that, I had been given some jail time, and I had been given, through a plea bargain agreement, an opportunity to cut some of that jail time off if I would go to residential drug and alcohol rehabilitation. And I had never heard all of those words strung together at one time, but I wasn't quite sure what that was going to entail or what that would mean, but I decided that that's what I would do. It sounded marginally better than jail, and it was marginally better than jail. And so June the 29th, my wife and I went out with 3 other couples, not a big deal. Came home, and I had what would be my last drink, and I'll be forever embarrassed about this, because we had just gone out to dinner. We'd had a few drinks at dinner. We came home, and I had an amaretto on the rocks and smoked a joint and went to bed. And 31 years later, I have to regularly tell people that my last drink was an amaretto. And frankly, that's just no way for an alcoholic to go down. It's humiliating. Amaretto will get you no street cred in Alcoholics Anonymous. There's just nothing flashy about that. It's humiliating. And had I known that was going to be my last drink, I promise you I would have done something much more dramatic. But we did that, and we spent June the 30th with my daughter, our daughter, Abby, who was 5 years old at the time. And then on July the 1st, my friend Ricky came by to pick me up to drive me off to treatment. I'll tell you what feels kind of synergistic. I spent this last week on the phone a number of times with that friend of mine, Ricky, and we're helping getting his daughter in treatment in the next week or two. I'm assisting with that, and Ricky's given me some of the most important rides of my life. He gave me the ride to where I met my wife, Connie. He gave me the ride to treatment, and so our lives intertwined quite a bit. But Ricky came by on that Saturday morning, and we walked out for me to head off to treatment just to do my time. And my wife, Connie, walked out with me, and I often kid that Connie gave me the kind of support that a lot of my brothers and sisters in AA didn't get. Connie's last words to me as we headed off to treatment were, "No matter what, baby, don't stop drinking." She said, "I don't know what you're going to be doing over there, but you just go do your time and come on back." So I will tell you that at the time, Connie and I had been married for 7 years. We had met just over 7 years before that. We met in a bar in Nashville, and Connie had just come back from where she was living in Lake Tahoe. She and I had never met, but she had been set up on a blind date with my friend Ricky. And here was this chick moving back from Lake Tahoe, freshly divorced. So she had a pocket full of divorce money. She had a divorce pickup truck, and she had a divorce 8-ball of cocaine. and I fell immediately in love with her. And we got Ricky pushed off to the side, and she and I started spending time together. Just a few short months later, we went on a trip to Mexico, and we got drunk one afternoon, and we got on a boat and went out to what they swear were international waters, and an Austrian merchant marine read in Spanish what he swears was a wedding ceremony. Now, Connie and I don't speak Spanish, so we're not sure what we agreed to on that boat, but we've been arguing about that for 37 years. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you here, because I sometimes forget that Connie's sobriety date is 10 days after mine. And even after she gave me that encouragement not to stop drinking, and we didn't speak again for over 2 weeks. So somewhere in, 10 days later, on July the 9th of 1989, she was out with my sister and my mother at a bar. They had a round of drinks, and they ordered a second round of drinks. And as they bought that second round of drinks, the server was setting a drink down in front of Connie, and she says a moment before, she didn't have this thought. But as that drink was going down, she stopped the server and said, "No, thank you, I've had enough." And she would tell you for years we didn't know where that came from. Today we do believe that we know where that intervention came from. But it wasn't a thought she had a moment before. It wasn't something she had been considering. She was struck in that moment with the decision to stop. Connie went 4 years without drinking and not coming to Alcoholics Anonymous, and she has that story to share. And I won't share it tonight, but she knows about white knuckle sobriety and holding on tight. Anyway, my buddy Ricky drives me off. We head over to this treatment center, and I walked in there, and the minute I got there, they began to, it felt like I had been charged with the crime of alcoholism, and that they were trying to convict me of the charges. And it felt like that I was being prosecuted and on the witness stand. And it felt that way because they gave me what some of you are familiar with. They did an assessment on me. Now, these days, these assessments are a little more clinical than they were back then, or at least at the place where I went. Among other things, they had 30 questions that they asked. And these 30 questions all began with the phrase, "Have you ever?" And they explained that "have you ever" means even once, and even with a really good reason. Have you ever drank in the morning? Have you ever drank alone? Have you ever had a DUI? Have you ever had a blackout? Have you ever had trouble at work because of drinking? Have you ever had trouble at home because of drinking? 30, have you ever questions, which you guys know just have check yes or check no, to what I contend are clearly essay questions. These are questions that beg for an explanation. These aren't questions I can just check yes or and I see a few smiles on the screen, and I laugh at that today looking back at it, but I will tell you that morning I could not make myself check the box, because people are going to draw conclusions about me based on how they're going to assess me based on how I check this box. And how can you do that without context? How can you do that without the backstory? How can you do that without understanding the surrounding circumstances around why I may have done some of these things? And part of my problem is and I had questions about the questions, right? Because I think I know what they're asking me. But I said, have you ever drank in the morning? And I said, be specific. What do you mean morning? And it seems like a reasonable question to me, because, see, I thought they're asking me if I'm that guy that's got to wake up at 4 in the morning or come to and with a half pint on the nightstand that I've got to take a pull off of to fight off the shakes and the sweats just to be able to limp into my day, to try to steel myself up enough to be able to brush my teeth and shave. And I've certainly done that a few times, but not so often I'm going to check it on this test. But I thought to myself, what if I'm out someplace at a very nice club at 2 a.m. at last call? Is that morning drinking? And if I don't explain the difference to you, you'll think I'm pitiful half pint on the nightstand guy rather than cool guy out at the club guy. And, you know, have you ever drank alone? I went, well, yes, but they left. You know, did you ever just look around and go, whoa, it was a party just a minute ago. Where did everybody go? And again, part of my problem is I think I know what they're asking me. See, I think they're asking me if I'm that guy that's got to go home and close the door and pull the shades and dim the lights, and used to be unplug the phone, now just put it on silent or vibrate, and drink in isolation, hiding from the world. And yeah, man, I've done that a few times, but I'm not going to check it on this test. But there's another kind of alone drinking that I did that I've discovered a lot of people did. I'm a guy that had to drink to go drinking, right? I got to drink to go where I'm going to go to drink. I got to drink before I go to the party. I got to drink before I go to the bar. I got to drink before I go to the football game. I've got to drink before I go do whatever it is I'm going to go do. And I know that this is a sophisticated crowd, so I'll ask this question. It's a rhetorical one, but do you think drinking to go drinking is really drinking? Or is that more like stretching before exercise, before running? You know, it's more of a preparatory deal than actual drinking. But they seem to think that that's drinking. My buddy Bill Crawford, some of you might have heard Bill from North Carolina speak, but he said his wife that he would be, you know, sipping on a beer, and his wife would get on him, and he would tell her that he was tapering off. And his wife said, well, when you taper it off, it looks a lot like drinking to me. And I think that that's what drinking to go drinking looked like to these people at the treatment center. Now, here's what I know, and what you guys in Alcoholics Anonymous taught me, is that how I answered those questions is not what makes me an alcoholic or not an alcoholic. Those kinds of questions might shine a light on my alcoholism. They might put a red flag on it, depending on how I answer. But I don't answer those questions a specific way that doesn't make me an alcoholic. How I answer them the way I do because I'm an alcoholic. I have those experiences. That's the outgrowth of my alcoholism. And there were 30 questions. And if everybody on here took that test, some of us would have different answers to some of the questions. Some people on here have not had a DUI. I had 6 of them. Some people on here have not totaled an automobile. I totaled 6 of them. Some people on here have been married 3 times to the same woman. I've been married to the same woman for 37 years. Some people on here couldn't keep a job because of their drinking. I kept a job for 38 years. Now, to be fair, I worked for my mother, so it was hard for her to fire me. So, and I shouldn't say I worked, I should say I was employed. There's a significant difference I've come to learn. But so I learned in Alcoholics Anonymous, in the literature that we have, that one of the things that makes me alcoholic was my relationship to alcohol. And that relationship to alcohol for me is described in our book on page 44, when it says that if when I honestly want to, I can't stop entirely, or if when drinking I have little control of the amount I take, I'm probably alcoholic. And it was somewhere around day 18, I've said for years, it was in my 3rd week in treatment, that I began to be able to honestly lay my life experience over that criteria and begin to see that that's probably true about me. That in fact, both of those things are true about me. That I don't seem to be able to stay stopped. Because I never tried to, only once, and I'll talk about it in a few minutes, but only once did I try to stop forever before I got to AA. But there were plenty of times that I was going to try to stop for a predetermined, by me, period of time. I was going to stop for a week, or I was going to stop till Connie quit being pissed off at me. I was going to stop till the heat got off. I was going to stop to please the judge. I was going to stop for a period of time. And even in those periods of time, I was not able to even meet the guidelines I had set up. But it didn't feel like lack of power. It felt like I changed my mind. I would decide I'm not going to drink. Let's pick a time in fact, I will tell you this story. When I left the courthouse the day after doing that plea bargain agreement, and they'd been trying to put me in jail for a year because they were using words like chronic and habitual, and I had been kind of a bad guy the night I had hit a police officer going the wrong way down a residential street with my car, and that'll get you arrested where I live. I don't know about Canada, but and so I wasn't a very popular guy in the courthouse or in the jailhouse. And when we did this plea bargain agreement, nothing frightened me more than the prospect of going to jail. I'm just not a tough guy. I'm not a street smart guy. I don't have the skill sets for jail. Just nothing frightened me more than the prospect of going to jail. And they said if I had another alcohol or drug related offense during this year, I'd go to jail for a year, no questions asked. I would do that time. And so I left the courthouse and I decided I'm not going to drink for the year of this probation. And you know, not because I'd had some, revelation other than I wanted to avoid the consequences. So I was fully committed to the decision not to drink for a year. But I was walking to my car, and as I began walking to my car, I began thinking about that. And the thought came to me pretty quickly, well, wait a minute, that's an overcorrection. The real problem is drinking and driving is my problem. That's what I get. That's what these 6 arrests are for, drinking and driving. So I will not drink and drive, or I will not drive and drink. Whichever one of those activities I start first, I won't do the other. And I was really committed to that, but I wasn't to my car yet. And I continued to walk and I continued to think. And before I got to my car, my plan took on one more revision. And the new plan was I won't drink much when I drive. Now, the truth is, I got no idea that I cannot determine whether I'm going to drink much when I drive or not. I don't understand the alcoholism I have. I don't understand the nature of this physical allergy and this mental obsession. I don't know anything I'm going through would be identified in our meetings as a lack of power and a strange mental blank spot and an inability to differentiate the true from the false. I hadn't heard any of that language yet. I don't hear that till I get to AA, and you gave voice to my alcoholism while I was with you. But before I got to AA, I couldn't explain why I did the things I did. You know, back in the chapter to the employer, and I know I'm with some committed AA members here tonight, but you got to be a committed AA member and be around here a long time to read all the way to the employer. But it says in there, among other things, it says when dealing with an alcoholic, there may be a natural annoyance that someone could be so weak, stupid, and irresponsible. And that's coming from the perspective of the employer who does not understand alcoholism. And I would tell you, to the untrained eye, alcoholism looks weak, stupid, and irresponsible, both to the alcoholic and to the people around the alcohol. So people weren't telling me to stop drinking. I come from a drinking family. You already know my wife wasn't trying to get me to stop. People were encouraging me to grow up, to be a man, to be a husband, to be a father, to show up for life in a way that it seemed like most people were showing up for life. And I struggled to do that, and I assumed that process was because I was weak, stupid, and irresponsible. People weren't using that specific, they were using irresponsible. That was a pretty common theme in my life. But so I don't know all of this as I'm going through it. I know sometimes when I was early in my sobriety, and I don't know if we've got some newer people on here tonight, I hope we do. But when I would hear people speak like I'm speaking tonight, sometimes it sounded like they knew what was happening to them while it was happening. And I will tell you that I couldn't articulate, I couldn't have explained what was happening to me. And so I don't understand this relationship I have to alcohol until after I get to Alcoholics Anonymous. But now I'm going to tell you what was the real mystery to me, even after I got to AA. Because that first part of the first step, I believe, the fact that I'm powerless over alcohol, describes the alcoholic relationship to alcohol. It describes, it is contains in that powerlessness that inability to control the amount I take and that inability to stay stopped. The physical and mental components of alcoholism seem to be contained in the first half of the first step. But the unmanageability, the fact that my life is unmanageable, that I believe is the spiritual component, the spiritual malady of Alcoholics Anonymous. I used to view that unmanageability as the external circumstances caused by my drinking, the chaos, the arrest, the financial problems, the marital problems, the parental problems, the whole host of problems that are alcohol-related problems. And I said, I can't manage those. And perhaps that's true, but I tend to view the unmanageability of my life as an internal condition. And it is at least partially described on page 52 in our book in the bedevilments. And it describes a sober me as having an inability to control my emotional nature, being prey to misery and depression, can't be of real use to other people, feelings of uselessness, bouts of fear. Some version of those feelings happen on me, and I don't understand that I got alcoholism even when I'm not drinking. I don't understand why on a Tuesday afternoon, stone sober, back in those days, that with a good job and a wife that loves me and a kid that loves me and circumstances that looked okay from the outside in, why do I feel the way that I feel? And you know, there's a passage back in A Vision for You, and it's describing Dr. Bob. And it says he was painfully aware he was somehow different. Yet he did not yet fully understand what it meant to be alcoholic. See, and I get that painful awareness that I'm somehow different. And we hear so many of us that show up at Alcoholics Anonymous and begin to talk about feeling different. Some people talk about feeling like they're on the outside looking in. And I would have told you, well, I don't know if I would have told you I felt different, because I didn't know how to articulate it. I didn't understand. I was painfully aware that I was somehow different, but I couldn't have put it into words. I certainly didn't talk to anybody about it. And if somebody had said, Steve, how do you feel? And I go, well, I feel somehow different. Well, tell us about that feeling. What does different feel like? And I go, I don't know how I feel. I just know I don't feel like you feel. I'm just sure I don't feel like the way everybody else feels. I know I'm not seeing the world the way everybody else sees it. I know I'm not experiencing the world the way everybody else sees it. I don't understand it. I can't describe it. I can't articulate it, but I'm stuck with it. And I think that's one of the roles that alcohol played for me. When I said I had to drink to go drinking, our book refers to alcohol in one place as a social lubricant. And I could really, it's like me oiling up. And when I'm oiled up, I can move easily amongst you. And without being lubricated, I feel like the ball in the pinball machine, just bouncing off of everything. And yet, here's the thing that I will tell you. I don't believe I looked like the ball in the pinball machine. I think stone sober, when I went into I know what it's like to stand in front of a door and get ready to walk into a social situation or a work situation or even a family situation and steel myself up to get ready to go through that door and act like a guy would act if he were confident, if he were comfortable, if he were personable, if he were gregarious, to act like I've got it together, and to hold that act together for as long as it takes. And then at the end of whatever evening or afternoon, whatever that is, to walk back out that door and it closed behind me, and finally be able to take a deep breath and finally be able to relax and get in my car and drive away and feel empty and feel loneliness. When our book says the alcoholic knows loneliness as few do, that is not an absence of people in our life. For me, it was an absence of connection, of genuine connection to the people in my life. It was an inability for me to show up authentically and genuinely. It was I've got this, and I don't understand that my alcoholism sober is defined by this hyper self-consciousness, this selfishness and self-centeredness that is the root of my trouble. And that selfishness, that alcoholic selfishness isn't I've got $10 and won't loan you $5. It's not that kind of selfishness. It is this self-obsession. It is this seeing everything through the prism of my alcoholism, through the prism of the fear and the insecurity and the uncertainty that colors the way I experience the world. And my job is to not get caught looking like I feel. My job is, Bill has a wonderful, for me, passage in the 12 and 12. Because, Bill writes so much about actors and plays and uses those metaphors. And he says, we're like actors in a play who've forgotten our lines. And I could see and I was going through life. When I read that, I thought, whoa, man, I'm going through life acting like, I'm improvising. It feels like everybody else knows their lines. It feels like everybody else knows how they're supposed to respond in life. And I am improvising, I'm guessing, I'm trying to figure out what I need to say and how I need to look and how I need to present in front of this particular person or this particular group or in this particular situation, because I am never comfortable with who I am. And the truth is, I don't have a clue who I am in that process. But I got no idea that that is part and parcel of my alcoholism sober when I get to Alcoholics Anonymous. That for me is the unmanageability of my life. I can't manage intellectually to overcome that. I can't read my way out of that. You can't talk me out of that. You can't explain me out of that. What had to happen and has to continue to happen for me through the process of the 12 steps is to become freer of that bondage of self, to face and be rid of those things in myself which have been blocking me, allowing me to become more fully and truly who I am and be able to walk out into the world and wear it like a loose garment, to be more free, to be more comfortable, to be okay being just okay. I'm a pretty average guy. And that's grading on a liberal curve. AA, we're so easy to please here. And geez, my whole first year sober, people just said, just don't drink and come back tomorrow. Gee, people were asking more than that of me other places. You guys were so easily impressed that it was fun to hang out with. But I didn't understand, it was such a revelation to me to begin to hear the conversations that men and women were having in Alcoholics Anonymous. And when I said earlier that when we talk about ourselves, when we begin to share freely and deeply of ourselves, that's where the connection begins to happen. And what is such a paradox, and life and Alcoholics Anonymous and the spiritual path are full of paradoxes. I think when I stop drinking, my pride and my ego are the things that get in my way. My pride and my ego act like they're my friends, and they say that we're here to help. And my pride and my ego say, you cannot let them see this. You can't say that. You can't be honest. You can't be yourself. And the truth is, so I will protect this image, this false image, and I still fall into it. This is not like ancient history. This is the nature of being human. But I have a mechanism through a relationship with the God of my understanding to lessen that grip on me. But, you know, it's also says in the big book, another actor metaphor for me is it says that the alcoholic more than most is an actor. He wears two faces, and it's a stage character that he wants his fellows to see. He wants to be a man of certain reputation, but in his heart he knows he doesn't deserve it. See, and I don't want to be immodest, but I will tell you that to some people I was a pretty impressive guy. I mean, I was a pretty popular guy. I was sought after company. Yet, none of that stuck with me. I felt like a fraud. And so even when winning your favor, it left me lonely, because in my heart, I knew I didn't deserve it. Because in my heart, I felt like you're responding to the actor, not who I am. And, you know, what's happened for me when I navigate, you know, I got about 10 minutes or so left, and I'm trying to figure out the way I want to use it, and which may be far different than the way you wish I would use it. But I got involved in AA right away. I came out of treatment, and I mean, I was attracted to you people quickly. You're fascinated. It's like the Jerry Springer show every day in AA, and there's characters. It's a fun, interesting place to be. And I was attracted to people being willing to talk honestly about themselves. You know, when the fifth step says that when I do that, when I withhold nothing, when I really put myself on the table with another human being and with God, it says that sense of isolation begins to disappear. And the reason that isolation begins to disappear, I believe, or at least in my experience, is because that's when I begin to connect to the rest of the human race. Those very things that I've been keeping secret and private and holding back from everyone are the very things that connect me to you and connect you to me. The thing is, I've got to risk being willing to let you see me. And what made that possible for me is how so many people in AA were willing to let me see them. And you made this a safe place for me. Not everybody is safe, but on the whole, AA has been a safe place for me. And I find the more that I open myself up to you, the more you accept me rather than turn away from me. The very things that I thought were the things that were going to get me kicked out of the club are the very things that that seem to make me, that are most useful. You know, our book says that we cling to the thought that in God's hand, my darkest past becomes my greatest asset. With it, I can avert misery and death for others. Think about that for a minute. Think about taking that worst thing, worst in quotation marks, that worst thing I've decided is the worst thing in my life, and recognizing that that is the very tool by which I can play a role in helping avert misery and death for others. Well, you don't get that just everywhere. You know, I didn't wake up this morning, you know, brush my teeth, take a shower, and tell Connie, baby, I got to head out. I'm headed out to avoid misery and death for folks today. Give me that superhero costume I've got. Which, by the way, spandex is not a good look for me. So, but we bring these things, and here's, you know, the spiritual solution, and that's what Alcoholics Anonymous offers me. It's a spiritual solution. That's the only solution AA offers. AA doesn't say that there aren't other solutions. We don't get into that debate. I certainly don't say it. But the solution that Alcoholics Anonymous offers me is a power greater than myself, which will solve my problem. And when we say that these are just suggestions in AA, I'm a guy that believes what I read in the book. So I absolutely believe they're suggestions. I think when in How It Works, it says following are the steps we took which are suggested as a program of recovery. That's what it means. I believe on page 164 when it says we realize we know only a little, our book is meant to be suggestive only. I believe that's what it means. But here's the caveat, it's the only suggestion we got. We don't have a second set of suggestions in Alcoholics Anonymous. The suggestion we have is that a power greater than myself will restore me to sanity, will make it unnecessary for me to take a drink, and will give me an opportunity for a life that's happily and usefully whole. And what I've discovered is that AA and this connection to a power greater than myself doesn't usually solve my problems in the way I think my problems need to be solved. There's a story I read not long ago, and it's become one of my favorites. But just a story about a guy that's a very successful businessman. He's vice president of a Fortune 500 company. He's competent and accomplished, but he has one problem as he sees it. Every week when he goes in to give his weekly report to the CEO of the company, he wets himself. And he is devastatingly embarrassed by the fact that he wets himself in this way every week. And the CEO of the company is a very kind and understanding man, and he suggests that he see the company psychiatrist to try to get help with this problem. And so he does. And he comes back the next week to give his report to the CEO, and as he's doing it, sure enough, he wets himself again. And the CEO goes, well, obviously the psychiatrist didn't help. And the guy went, no, the psychiatrist, it was great. He solved my problem. The CEO goes, hey, man, you just wet yourself again. He went, yeah, but I'm not embarrassed about it anymore. So which problem is getting solved? When I'm out here trying to live this spiritual life, when I say that spiritual principles will solve all my problems, the way spiritual principles solve my problems is to make them not problems. Spiritual principles don't necessarily change the circumstances of my life in the way that I wish they would turn. Spiritual principles put me in a position to navigate the circumstances of my life effectively, sanely, and soberly in a way that wouldn't have been available to me. You know, at 10 years sober, I went bankrupt. Connie and I went bankrupt. She would tell you that I went bankrupt and took her with me, but we had our home foreclosed on, and we lost our automobiles. They came by and they loaded these cars up on a flatbed truck to drive them off. And I called my sponsor, Frank, and I said, Frank, man, they took our cars. And he went, no, Steve. He said, they took their cars. He said, they took the cars you quit paying for. And, you know, I said, well, potato, you know, but what's funny to me, at least, is I tell that story a fair amount. You know, it'll come up in meetings or in some way, and I'll have somebody come up to me after the meeting with a financial question. And I'll go, dude, were you listening? I went bankrupt. You don't want financial advice from me. You didn't want it. You don't want financial advice from me. But what I can tell you how to do, I can tell you how to go bankrupt and stay sober and mostly sane and sound. I got that conversation to share with you. But don't ask me whether you should buy it or not, because I'm going to go, yeah, buy it, man. What the hell? And so, you know, when we're navigating this spiritual, the spiritual life, it is not about me getting smarter. I certainly haven't. It's not about me becoming more virtuous. It's about me finding a way to navigate the waters of my life in a way that hopefully, again, I stay sane, sound, and sober, but the end game is so I can be useful. Can I be of some use to you? I'm going to spend the last couple of minutes. I'll tell you the two most often told lies are, Rod told me I didn't have a hard stop at 9 o'clock, but I promised not to run but a couple minutes over. But the two most often told lies in Alcoholics Anonymous is, I'll be brief, and I'll end with this. And you guys have been to enough meetings to know if you hear somebody say that at the end of a meeting, strap in, you got a little while to go. But so I'll be brief. But I do want to talk about for a moment that connection to a higher power, because when I got to AA, I don't know whether I was atheist or agnostic, but I was at least apathetic. I was uninterested in that. And I did not believe that a spiritual experience was available to me. The language made me uncomfortable. I went through my book the first year I was sober with a magic marker and blacked out everywhere it said spiritual experience and spiritual awakening. I did that with my sponsor's knowledge. I used to say with his approval, and he said, no, but it was with his knowledge. And, but he had taken me to the back of the book in Appendix 2, the spiritual experience of the educational variety, and there was language that was more accessible to me. And it described a spiritual experience as a personality change sufficient to bring about recovery. And I was willing to have a personality change before I was willing to have a spiritual experience. And he said, Steve, you're hung up on language. I just want you to have the experience. Are you willing to give yourself over to this process? He said, you have surrendered to the problem of alcoholism. Are you willing to surrender to the solution that Alcoholics Anonymous offers? That's the third step decision. I become acquainted with my problem, but am I willing to commit to the solution? And he says, if you will commit to the actions of the 12 steps, he says, you will have an experience. And I don't care what you name it or what you call it or how you describe it. I just want you to have it. And see, one of the things I think we struggle with is our understandable attempt to describe a spiritual experience, to describe God, to put a label on these things that defy description. I've heard it said, how can you describe the scent of a rose? Well, I can no more describe to you a spiritual experience or God than I can the scent of a rose, but we use some human frame of reference to try to build a level of understanding. And so when I couldn't come to grips, when I would spend time telling people what I did not believe about God, and I spent a lot of time my first couple of years telling people what I didn't believe. And a kind man grabbed me one night after the meeting and he said, Steve, good news, we don't care what you don't believe. I said, you are free not to believe anything you don't want to believe in AA. It's okay. I don't care what you don't believe. He said, what do you believe? Decide what you do believe and act like a guy would act if he believed it. And that's where he had me. And then I heard but I was so uncomfortable hearing people describe their relationship with God. And then I heard the story that some of you may have heard, the blind man and the elephant. And it says, there were 3 blind men from Hindustan to learning much inclined. They went to see an elephant, but all of them were blind. One of them grabbed the elephant by the tail, and one of them grabbed the elephant around its leg, and the other one grabbed the elephant by its trunk. And they went back to their village, and the villagers who had also never seen an elephant were asking them, tell us about the elephant. And the one who grabbed the elephant by the tail described it as being like a rope. And the one who grabbed it around its big leg said it was like a tree trunk. And the one who grabbed the elephant by its trunk described it as being like a snake. And they argued endlessly about what an elephant was, never understanding that the elephant was big enough to entail all those things. And so I have come to take the point of view that no matter how you describe God or how I describe God, that God is big enough to encompass all those things. And we're really not describing God, we're describing our relationship to God. We're describing our touch point. I'm telling you, this is where I touched God. This was where I entered into this relationship. And as time goes on, I may get a more fully formed view of this entity. But right now, I'm just right here. As we take the steps, it says at the fifth step, I think that we've entered the world of the spirit. In AA, I'm in the foyer of the big mansion of spirit. And I want to continue to explore the mansion more deeply, more fully, to go to every room over time. But it's nice to have just arrived. I end by telling you, in fact, I'll end with this. I end by telling you that there was a man here in Nashville that was a dear friend to me, and when I was newly sober, he was that guy, and I know you people have these, you have them in your meeting, that particularly when you're new, that man or that woman comes in, and you saw them last week, and you hope they'll be there this week. And he or she walks in, and I just feel better because he showed up. And my friend Mo was one of those guys. Mo had been sober about 20 years, maybe 25 when I showed up, and I thought he was old as God, but he was probably younger than me now. But he was just one of those guys, you know, that carried himself in such a way that it just made me feel like everything was going to be okay. And Mo always ended his talks and even shares in a meeting with the verse to a poem. And when I first heard it in 1997, that expressed and explained the relationship that I have with a higher power here in AA. And in 2003, Mo came down with cancer, and just 6 weeks before he passed, my friend Jerry and I went to breakfast with him. And at breakfast that morning, I said, we knew his time was short, and I said, Mo, would you mind if when I get a chance to share my story that I end with that poem? So I said, it will, in the truest sense of AA, it will help me pass on what you passed on to me and so many others, and that's what we do. And I said, but it will help me keep your memory close and what you've meant to me. And he was a little embarrassed, you know, and he said, oh, Steve, he said, if you think it'll help another drunk, because that's the kind of AA member Mo was. That's what he cared about. He loved drunks more than anybody I've ever known. I mean, I love AA, but I can get pretty tired of drunks. You know what I mean? You can love AA and get tired of alcoholics. It's kind of a weird deal. All of a sudden, we don't want one coming to our meeting, right? They're just, you know, look, he's sitting in my chair. He parked in my parking place. The guy's got no respect for me. Mo was never ran out of patience for the alcohol. And he said, Steve, if you think it'll help another drunk. And I will tell you, since 2003, I've never ended a talk without the verse to this poem. And I've had the chance to share it with tens of thousands of people. And it has never not helped another drunk, because I'm the drunk it always helps. And he said, I sought my God I could not see. And I sought my soul eluded me. But I sought my fellow man and found all three. And that's what Alcoholics Anonymous has been for me. Again, you guys let me share with myself with you here tonight. You are kind enough to pretend to listen for an hour. And as a result of that, I have a life that has not required me to take a drink since June the 29th of 1989. And for the vast majority of that time has afforded me, when I'm willing to accept it, a life that's happily and usefully whole. So thanks so much for having me here with you tonight.
Thank you, Steve. What an excellent message. I could relate to so much that I was writing notes as you were talking there, you know. And, you know, you talked about step one, which is pretty much important for us to begin with, and how about that powerlessness is that physical allergy, and the unmanageability is the spiritual part of that. And I can really relate to that because I really was having a problem for sure. And, you know, you said it was not so honorable to end up with amaretto as your last drink. My last drink was 8 ounces of sherry, 18% alcohol. Sure. So we're in the same company, my friend. And you have 30 questions. Boy, I'm glad we don't live in the States. We only have 20 questions here. But I did pass. I got them all right. So that's 100% alcoholic. That's the main thing. And then you go into the loneliness aspect. Even though I had my wife and my family with me, I had lost connection with them. And then you talked about step 5, how that gave you that connection to others again. And that's an amazing part of our program is clearing that wreckage of the past and going forward. And then you talked about the spirituality, and you really went on about spirituality, and that's what this program is all about. If we reach for it, we look for it, we can find it. We can find it within ourselves. We can all make changes that we need to change, as long as we do it, and as long as we stay focused on the task. So once again, thank you, Steve. Excellent message, and have fun in Tennessee. I would like to go there one day to visit that beautiful place. And now we're going to get into the closing part of the meeting. And I've asked a sober brother who's really involved himself in service work over the last couple of years. And I'd like to ask Jay to read a vision for you, please.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jay. I'm a grateful recovered alcoholic for today. Thanks, Al, for allowing me to be of service. It is a privilege, but it's also an honor to be responsible. That wasn't always my story, so I'm very grateful. A vision for you. Big book, page 164. Our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order. But obviously, you can't transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. And this is the great act for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. Thank you.
Thanks very much, brother. Good job.